Alright guys, welcome back to the shop. So today I'm working on these chainsaw bar mounts. So the bushings have been machined. Those are the ones I made. Here's one over here with the brass sleeves pressed in, and they fit on this polished shaft. I should have shaft collars holding it in. And then what I did was cut some slots into a piece of plate and then welded it onto the bottom of the shaft after I faced it on the lathe to get it square, and then had a jig set up, got that welded in, and then I had to grind some material off to allow the nuts to have access. So if you look over here, this is the end of the chainsaw bar, and this slides in here like this, and then that allows you the ability to move the bar relative to the actual chainsaw, the mill frame, and that allows you to tension the chain as you move it in and out. So I'm anticipating, since this chain is so long, there will be a lot of stretch as it heats up. So hopefully this is enough adjustment to take up that slack, but we'll see. So yeah, so that mounts on there, and then I had to drill through this guy here, and it was a little tricky because so I had to drill through this, and it was a little tricky because this chainsaw bar is hardened steel. So what I did is I drilled and threaded this piece of plate here, this 3/8 plate first. So as you can see, the plate itself is threaded because the chainsaw bar is hardened steel, so I can't really thread that. So I just drilled holes in it, but using normal high-speed steel drill bits, I couldn't actually get a hole through it because the material of the bar is so hard. So, and I don't have carbide tip drill bits. So what I kind of did was, see, the holes are not pretty, but it doesn't matter because as long as this is located and tightened down, those don't matter for sizing. But I took a bunch of concrete drill bits that have a piece of carbide in the tip, and I ground them down, and then I drilled it with that. As you can see, that one's broke. It took me a couple drill bits. This is the last one that I used. It didn't break off, but I tried to grind a nice regular drill point on it, and then grind the fins down the sides. This one's chipped, but after a couple sets of concrete drill bits, I was able to get through it. It wasn't pretty, but it was really all I could do because I don't have any carbide tip drill bits, and this chainsaw bar is wicked hard. So, and then these, again, this plate's threaded, so these just thread in from the bottom. Just some grade A bolts here, flange bolts. And these thread up in here like that. And then again, our bracket sits on here. And then once these are threaded, I didn't screw them all the way in, but once those are threaded in, that locks this tight to the bar. And then this bracket has a slot so it can move in and out. And then you just lock it down at whatever, whenever the chain is proper tension, then you can lock this bracket down. And I'm not going to put a tensioner nut that'll push this on this side. I'm just going to put one on the other side. And then when you push this tight, then it'll allow this to be loose. The other side will push the bar this way, and then once it's in where we want it, then I'll slide this into position, lock these down. That'll lock this whole thing down relative to the bar, and then that'll keep your bar tight. And then again, this bushing here, these just have shaft collars on them right now, and these, that'll allow this bushing to slide up and down, and this will be attached to the frame, so then that allows the bar to be changed for the depth of cut. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. Now that I got one built, I'm going to record the other side and the process it takes to build it, and then after that we're moving up to the actual frame. I got to get the bushings mounted to the frame somehow, and then it's time to mount the motor and the jack shaft and get that all figured out. So it's getting there. Alright, so this is the other end of the chainsaw bar, and I'm going to use, these holes are for the saw where the normally pins stick through here, and that allows the adjustment. So I'm actually going to just embiggen these holes a little bit and use those as my holes, since they're already there and they're about where I want them anyways. Now what I might do first is I'm going to go take one of these concrete bits, put a little bit of a better grind on it, and then I'm going to use that. Okay. So I just ground that a little bit to make it a little sharper. We'll see how that drills. Through there nice. This is kind of missing its flutes. So there's half a flute there, but it's drilling, so. Okay, got our holes. And again, this isn't the right way to do this. If you really need a carbide tipped or a solid carbide drill bit, but that works. Yeah, again, this isn't ideal, but using these drill bits, these concrete bits with the piece of carbide and the tip, it works. So, you know, if I had a nice set of carbide tip drill bits, I'd use it. But I'm kind of just using what I got, and I'll take a high-speed steel drill bit and show you what happens. Oh, this drill bit looks pretty new. Actually, might be brand new. It's just been sitting in the drawer for a while. Well, I don't have a notch to. Here, take this punch. So I give it a little starting hole. See, and that's with a high-speed steel drill bit. It doesn't even, like, it barely scratches the surface of this stuff. So this bar is wicked hard, and it was just destroying my drill bits. So that's why I had to use concrete bits. So alright, now we got our hole drilled. I got to mark this. I'm going to cut a piece of 3/8 plate, and then we'll mark it and get it ready to slip in there. Is the whole bar is tapered, so there's not really a good kind of like square point to make these measurements off of. even down here, kind of have the end of this. Guess maybe I could do that, but okay. So that looks pretty square to me. And then this thing is 1 inch wide, so we are right at 1 inch wide. And it all looks pretty square. Punch these. Flip it back over and double check. That looks all right. Now I'm going to take a real punch these. Now I'm going to throw them in the drill press. Double check that. Here's 3/8, 5/16 tapping drill. So we got our 3/8 in there, or 5/16 in there. To also help our tap kind of find its way. Alright, looks alright. Alright, so I got this, this is drilled and tapped, cleaned up, and then I cut a piece of stock here. This is some 3/8 stock. And I cut it a little long. The reason being is the holes on this side of the bar are a little closer together because I used the holes that were in the bar originally. So when this mechanism is made, this will be pretty dang close to here. So like this is the other one from the other side. These holes are closer and a nut has to sit on top of here, so I actually had to grind these out so that the nut could tighten down. And on this one, these holes are even closer, so the nut, I would actually have to take away material from this shaft. And this is already going to be the weakest point of the whole chainsaw mill, so I don't want to take any material off that shaft. So what I think I'm going to do to fix that issue is I'm going to make the mount further back this way and the slots up here, and that way the slots will begin and end before the shaft is even near it, and that way that these holes don't actually have to go past the shaft, so I don't have that issue. So I think kind of that was the best way to overcome that. I could have re-drilled new holes, but the bar tapers at the end and it would have been pretty close to the edges of the bar, and I don't like that either. So I think I'm going to stick with this, and like I said, just kind of move this back a little bit. Cheaper center punches. So we kind of just lightly lightly punching those. Then I'm bringing my real punch with a nice good detent. Okay. Now I'm going to go drill those out at 3/8, and then we'll get our grinder out and we'll cut that notch. So I got those drilled out. Now I'm going to make some marks here. Give me a little reference to follow as I cut these. So I'm just going over right to the edge of that drill hole. Alright guys, so I got this thing notched out. I was going with the angle grinder, and then the SD card filled up, but I started with that, but it was taking forever, so then I scored lightly down each column, and then I used a Sawzall with one of those carbide blade, the Diablo carbide ones, and I cut it with the Sawzall, and then came with the angle grinder and cleaned it up a little bit, and then I finished it off with a hand file. And I used a round file inside of here, and then a flat file throughout here. So yeah, it you know, again, it's not perfect, but I don't have a milling machine, so I can't make slots like that any other way. And it fits in here nice. There's not a whole lot of play in there, so that, you know, that works pretty good. And so yeah, now I'm going to move on to I got to get this shaft mounted, this polished shaft. So I need to get this mounted to here. So I'm going to grind a little bit of I tried to machine one of these in the lathe, and the steel's too hard. It kind of turns rough. Because originally what I was going to do is I was going to thread the end of this, and then bolt it to here, and then weld it after it's bolted, and then take the bolt out and fill in the weld on the back. But just to help locate it. But I don't have a good way to drill and thread that. So what I did instead on the other one is I just set up a nice jig that was real solid, and that's what I used. So I'm going to do the same thing again. But first I just want to lay this out a little bit and take a look at it, make sure everything looks right, and then I'll get that on there where it needs to be and weld that in. I'll clamp this in. I have these side bars here. So these bars will locate it side to side. And this is a nice machine surface, so I can use that as a reference. And then I'm going to have the shaft collar back here to lock that down where I need it to be. So the first thing I'm going to do is clamp this together. And then I'm going to put another clamp down here to make sure it stays flush to the surface. So yeah, that looks nice and even in both directions there. And then this should be perfectly square to this surface here. And then I'm going to take this guy. And this is the surface that was not cut, so we know that that is theoretically square. So yeah, what we'll do, I'll just mount that in there, and then once I'm going to go clean this up and bevel the end of this, and I'll clamp this in solid, and then we'll go ahead and get this guy welded up. The other one welded all right, so. Okay. And last look, everything looks square. Go ahead and get a bead in here. just tacking it opposites to help hold it in there. Oop, looks like I spilled a little weld on our clamp. Yep, that's alright though, I'll get it off. Got a little excited there. Yeah, it's a little bit stuck in there. That's not what you want to do. Alright, so I got the clamp off and welded over where it was stuck. So not gorgeous, but it'll hold. We got our slots machine, so this will slides real nice in there now. And then again, we got our bushings too that'll sit up on here. So now I got both sides done. So this will slide. I just got to add a tensioning nut down here. And then on this side, we got pretty much the same deal. And it slides in and out. Bolts are a little tight. So this will slide in and out like that. And that'll give us our lateral movement to tension the chain. And now I have to figure out what I want to do down here, because I'm thinking I'll put a nut and weld it to here, this nut to here, and then when I drive a screw in down here, that'll push this bottom plate, which will push the bar out. Alright, so this is what I came up for for the chain tensioner. So these nuts are welded on the end of here, and then as you tighten these, they push on the studs. So then what would be occurring right now, this bracket's just sliding in here, but the chain would be on here. You would like, I'll cut the chain and rivet it together where it's tight when you slide it on, and then once you start using it, the saw heats up, you tighten these. And I got to get studs that are threaded the whole length, but as you tighten them, it pushes against these bolts here, and then you loosen these up and you tighten these down, and as you tighten them, it forces this bracket to move relative to that. And once you get your chain to the proper tension, then you'll lock these down, and then you'll go on the other side and lock the other ones down, and then these would be extending the full length. But yeah, so that'll hold tension. And then the only thing I was worried about, in retrospect, I wish I would have put this on the other side, but the bracket's different. There's not the same, I can't flip these brackets between them, because this drive sprocket is in here, but the length, the total, like the maximum length, because the bolt doesn't change as it moves, it just pulls this bracket. So this length right here would be the maximum extension. So this sprocket has to just be mounted just shy of that, which that is where, right about where you would mount it anyways. So I think it's okay where it's at. But this shaft will set right here, and then it'll be close to these adjustments, but it won't be, you know, that close. And I could always turn this collar down a little bit if I needed to. If I needed to bring it in just a little bit more, I could turn this a little. But yeah, I think that'll work. All right, guys, welcome back to the shop. Today I'm working on getting the chainsaw bar actually connected to the frame of the chainsaw mill. So got the welder hooked up, I got the MIG running, and I am getting the frame tacked together. And I'm also working on getting the upright, the bushing supports that I machined, I'm getting those welded on. Originally I was gonna try and like mill them. I have a buddy with a milling machine, and I was gonna do some different things. And then I was thinking about turning the outside, putting a steel collar on or whatever, because the bushings are stainless. Because I machined them, that was all I had. But I tested a little test weld. This was one of the bushings I messed up on. I bored it out too deep. So I did a little test weld, just tacked it on there, and it looked okay. And then I beat on it with a hammer, and it was super solid. So I decided that it would be okay to weld them. I was worried about heat distortion of the bushing, so I tried not to, weld the crap out of it. But and then I had a wet rag that I kept on there to keep it cool, and then I made sure I cooled it down to again avoid distorting with the heat, and it seemed to work okay. So I'll show you the side that I got done. So if you look over here, I've got the first side. So I've gone ahead and I welded this cross piece in nice and square. This is the sliding bracket that allows the bar to be tensioned. So I got that fabricated on there, and I have it set at the lowest setting right now, so that way I have all the adjustment left that's in the bracket. That way once I'm going to build everything at the lowest setting, and then once the chain is actually on, then I can tension the slack out of the chain. Again, I don't know if it's enough, but I'm really hoping that it's enough. So, and then on this side you can see the bushing. It's just, I welded down the side a little bit on both sides. So hopefully that's enough. But yeah, so that side's all done. So now I'm moving down over here to the other side, and I've got this cleaned up and the surface prepared, and I've got the bevels cut on here and this all cleaned up. So this will be going right in here. It'll set in here like this, and then once I get this good and square with the frame and weld it in, then I'll weld the bushing on at the proper height, and then we'll test it out and see if the bar actually moves up and down. So hopefully everything's square. Yeah, this is like the crucial step, because if this isn't square and that bushing gets on a bind, this thing won't lower, and I won't have that adjustability in the height. So I'm really hoping that everything's working out. So, all right, get my helmet on, get my, I'm using a Fireball Tools square here, so I'm gonna get that thing in the corner. It's super nice for mocking these up and holding things square. It's real beefy, it's cast iron. So I'm gonna get that thing in there, get this squared up, and then I'll tack everything in, weld it, and then we'll keep on moving. And then once I get that done, the other plan is to take the, this is that shaft. I machined that chainsaw sprocket. So the plan is, over here, I got the sprocket machine and on these flange bearings. So my plan is to cut some plate and pieces of angle iron here, get this thing mounted in, drill the holes, mark them and drill them, and get this shaft mounted up to here, because this is what the pulley will ride on that'll feed or get fed by the motor. So once I get that other mount done, then I'll mount this guy up. Once everything's square and looking good here, then I can move on to mounting the motor. And then after that, I got to hook up, the fuel. So yeah, sorry, the card was full, but yeah. So once I get this done, then I'll get that jack shaft mounted, and then it's a matter of getting the motor set up, get the pulleys connected. I got to put a tensioner in for the pulleys, and then work on. I got to steal the wiring harness out of that mower that I pulled the motor out of. So once I get that wiring harness out, then I can wire up the engine, put a control panel, and I also have an electromagnetic clutch that was for engaging the mower deck, and I'm kind of tempted to put that on here. That way I could have a safety switch that if anything happened, you could hit that paddle switch and it would kill the power to this right away versus having to disengage the tensioner. And I've also been thinking about just mounting that up by itself to turn it on and off, but I don't know if that electromagnetic clutch kind of engages quick. So I don't know if it'd be too much jerk all at once to get the chain spinning. So I got to look at that, kind of play around with it and see what it looks like. But yeah, so that's down the road. But today, hopefully I can just get this thing mounted up, get the jack shaft mounted, maybe start working on the motor. So, all right, let's get started. All right, so I got the jig all set up here. Everything's nice and square. I'm set at the lowest setting I can be on this adjustment over here. So now all I have to do is hopefully just get this thing tacked in. Okay. Got this dune buggy in the way. Too many projects in here. Okay, so it's all tacked in. One last check to make sure we're square. And again, this is diving down over here just because these bars have some flex in them. So that doesn't matter. The whole angle iron can torque over the distance. That's why this is low. But I'm going to put the jig on this side after I get this one in. Alright, I think we're pretty good to go. But again, I don't want this thing to distort, so I'm kind of trying to spread the heat out a little bit and make sure that I don't weld too much in one spot. And I'm by no means a professional welder or anything, but again, this might not be beautiful, but it'll hold. Got this jig set up here, got the bushing nice and centered and square, and it's flush with the bottom, so now I'm going to get this guy tacked in. Crank my settings up a little bit just to get a little hotter weld in here to help penetrate. But again, I am worried about the heat distortion, so hopefully it's not too bad. Oh, this is the first time I've actually put this in and got it mounted. So now we're mounted. I'm just right at the start of these grooves here for the chain adjustment. So I got about an inch of adjustment, and over here I'm right at the start of these ones as well, and the adjustments screws are totally backed out, they're loose. So first thing I'm noticing is there is definitely some flex in the bar, but neither end is locked down. So once they're locked down, I think I can pull a lot of that flex out of there and kind of keep some tension on this. But now I'm going to take my wrench here and adjust these a little bit. See if our bar moves. It's kind of difficult to film this and do it. So actually, even with just finger tension, I can adjust this. So I need to get some different bolts that are threaded all the way to the end, because that's as far as I can tension this with these bolts. So we traveled about an inch right there. Then if you come down to this side, we've traveled, oh, not quite an inch. So yeah, that is working. We're tensioning. What I need to get though is just some longer bolts. That way, because I still have a good bit of travel here, that way I can get the rest of that travel. And then what we would do after we get the chain tensioned, I would tighten this side down, and then come over here, take the slack out of the bar, and then tension these down here. And in doing that, I can actually visibly see the bar getting tighter as I do that. Come down here. Now, that bar is actually very tight. With those tightened down, there's only a little bit of flex in the bar itself, so I'm pretty happy with that. And then with regard to our adjustment of height, it seems a little tight. And that's going to be because this is pretty tight, and I think it's because there's a lot of just inconsistency between, you know, everything's not perfectly square and these bushings are holding it real tight. But I can come over here and tap these. I can tap these and it moves. And that moves up and down. So I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, it's a little tight, but you know, that's due to the fact there's a little bit of difference. You know, we're welding this in. It's not perfectly, not everything's not perfectly square, but it's pretty dang close. So yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with that. And then what I'm going to do is just put a shaft collar like these down here. I'll have a shaft collar above and below. So this will ride on the log itself. Then I'll set the bar depth to whatever thickness of slab you're milling. And then I'll put these shaft collars in, lock this down, and then I'll have one above and below over here as well. So there'll be one there, and then there'll be one here too, and then that'll lock that down, and that way when you're milling, then you have your set depth and the thing's locked down. So the next part now is I need to get the jack shaft mounted. So I need to get this jack shaft mounted, and I got to do a little bit of thinking. I'm trying to keep the weight on this as low as possible because this needs to be handled by 2 guys. There's already going to be a heavy motor sitting on top of here, so I don't think I want to use this heavy square tube piece of some heavier plate probably across the top and bottom, and that's what I'll drill my holes into. And then again, this will be mounted like this, set right on there like that. So yeah, I got to do a little bit of figuring, and then once I get and I kind of want these, I want some distance between these bearings, because the more separate they are apart, the more stable the shaft will be. And then once I get the maximum depth that I want to be able to cut with the saw figured out, and where the pulley sets, then I'll cut this shaft to length so there's not a whole bunch of extra sticking up. So yeah, so that's what we got going. Overall, pretty happy. I'll give you guys a little look. Overall, I'm pretty happy with it. This will be mounted right there, and then we'll get that motor on. So it's coming along.